After ensuring Mino's safety at a distant spot, Jahir turned his attention to them, suspecting they might be the cleanup crew. He tightened his grip on his sword, finding them incredibly vexing. Raising his sword high and then slamming it into the ground with all his might, he reluctantly used a skill he had initially avoided using. In that moment, a strong five-horned garnak materialized from the sword, emitting powerful waves of energy toward the enemies. Overwhelmed by the sheer force, they scattered in a frantic bid to save themselves. But their efforts were in vain, as the energy waves swiftly overtook them, tearing their bodies apart and ending their lives instantly. Jahir advanced through the lifeless bodies, ultimately reaching Janiah and Uran, who sat on the ground. Uran, perplexed by Jahir's abilities, stood up and fled, instructing his companions to handle Jahir. Janiah, sitting alone amidst the corpses of his comrades, felt frustration at the dire turn of events. Jahir, realizing there was no way out for him, approached Janiah, demanding to know where they had hidden the nightmare. In response, Janiah asserted that survival held no purpose, for once Jahir discovered the truth, they would wish for a swifter demise, leaving Jahir puzzled about whom he referred to. Accepting his inevitable fate, Janiah produced a specter crystal and consumed it, much to Jahir's surprise. He recalled a conversation with Mino, during which she explained that those in chaos used such crystals not as narcotics but as medicine to reduce their spiritual corruption. Failure to do so would transform them into dreaded ghouls. As a result of consuming the specter crystal, Janiah underwent a monstrous transformation, becoming a fearsome, grotesque creature with large teeth, numerous tongues, and a formidable physique. His eyes glinted with ferocity as he began slaughtering anyone who crossed his path, sowing terror and chaos throughout the village. Having undergone this transformation, Janiah pondered the worth of dignity in the world and why he had been so afraid when he could now revel in his newfound freedom. With intense determination in his eyes, he turned towards Jahir, believing he could now vanquish him with his newfound power. To his astonishment, Jahir stood his ground confidently, clutching his sword, and declared that a human could not exist in a world like this. Gazing at Janiah, Jahir wondered about the true nature of this enigmatic figure, realizing that even his keen sense of suspicion could not unveil his essence. Jahir didn't care. He raised his sword and aimed its power at Janiah, causing him intense pain. The energy wave shattered Janiah's body, and it started raining suddenly. In his agony, Janiah remembered playing in the rain as a child, reflecting on this moment as he fell apart, marking his end. Jahir stared at Janiah's lifeless body, pondering his character. After a while, he walked on, hoping to find someone who knew the location of the nightmare, and left the area. Back at the pub, Jahir found Mino unconscious. Carlton, lying on the ground, realized they needed to alert the inner fortress. Jahir noticed Mino's body turning black and she asked him to kill her before she turned into a monster. Jahir finally realized that Mino was human and remembered he couldn't use comprehend on her. He pulled out his sword, thinking emotions had no place where he was headed. But Claire stopped him, telling him to wait. She believed it might not be too late, despite the guards trying to restrain her, urging her to reach the medical facility. Ignoring her own injuries, Claire insisted Jahir not kill Mino and wait a bit longer. In the medical camp, the physicians assessed Mino's condition, hoping her transformation could be halted. Jahir stood nearby, awaiting their update. Suddenly, an emergency notice announced an invasion of small dead creatures in the fortress. Panic swept through the people as they scrambled to evacuate, while authorities urged them to leave quickly. A child asked a guard where to go, but the guard turned out to be one of the deadly monsters. The child watched in shock as the monster attacked him with its tentacles, and more monsters emerged. A group of powerful warriors leaped from the rooftops, wielding weapons to battle the monsters. They defeated all the creatures. Jahir wondered if the leader was the one Mino had mentioned. Claire turned to him and reminded him of his promise to reject the rules of this place, judge the world by his standards, and define humanity in his own way. She said she understood people like him very well and had seen someone like him before. She put her hand on Mino's forehead and said that the people who live and adapt to this place aren't foolish, they do it because they don't have any other choice. Jahir disagreed, saying it wasn't about choice but about lacking courage. Confused, Claire asked what kind of courage he meant. Jahir explained it was the courage to surpass limitations and find a better definition. Claire remarked that he seemed like someone who pursued such things, but she lacked the courage to understand it. She looked at him and stated that she knew one thing: he was very dangerous. She told him he needed to leave because people found hope in him, and if he stayed, they would fall into despair, reminding him of the deaths of his comrades in the tower. Jae remembered Mino's request never to give up on this world and pondered his decision. Meanwhile, standing by Carlton's bed as he experienced the same condition, James urged the physician to use all available medicine to treat him. They complied, grinding a horned beast's horn into a paste and feeding it to Carlton. Unfortunately, it had no effect, causing them to worry. Jae asked James if there was any chance Carlton could revert to being human after death. Frustrated, James admitted he didn't know, leaving Jae feeling desperate. Jae shook Carlton and asked him to wake up, saying he had a question. James was shocked and angry, but to their surprise, Carlton opened his eyes and asked Jae to kill him, claiming he was the only one who could do it. Confused, Jae questioned why he wouldn't ask to be saved instead. Carlton referred to the law of Gorgon, explaining that corrupt souls had to be destroyed immediately. Jae admired his loyalty, thinking that a few more people like him could have prevented him from being trapped in the tower for 40 years. They received an alert that Carlton's soul corruption had reached 94%, and deadification was about to begin. Just then, an individual who had killed the dead monsters entered the camp, Captain Jahir of the Anti-Dead Extermination Squad. James was surprised, and Jahir declared that according to the laws of Gorgon, he would kill Carlton and another individual. Announcing his intention to kill Carlton and another person, Jahir raised his sword. However, before he could act, Jae stepped in and took the sword, saying he had some questions for Carlton and wouldn't allow Jahir to harm him. Jae's ability to block the attack with his bare hands surprised Jahir. Jahir then admitted he didn't know who Jae was but explained that killing someone like Carlton, a Stage 5 adapter, would cause a disaster they wanted to prevent. Jae asked if there was an alternative, revealing a 5-horned beast's horn, which shocked everyone. A physician confirmed that the horn could bring Carlton back to normal. He crushed the horn with his bare hands, surprising them even more. The crushed horn was given to Carlton and Mino, which stopped Carlton's spiritual corruption from worsening, bringing relief. However, the horn accelerated Mino's deadification due to her low stamina. They received a warning that her soul corruption had reached 95%, and deadification was imminent. Jahir approached Mino, but Claire asked them to call Chango, who could perform a dead slash to remove the corruption. Jae was confused, so Claire explained the dead slash removed only the corruption. Jahir said Chango was busy and couldn't be called for something trivial. Jae insisted on killing Mino because she had requested it. Jahir told him to step aside, but Jae grabbed his sword, activating a skill. Claire pleaded with him not to do it, but Jae remained still, placing the sword on Mino's heart. As bright particles appeared, Jae was enveloped in a bright light and transported to an empty space. There, he saw an old man beside Mino, offering help. The old man was shocked to see Jae and asked how he entered their world. He also noted that someone with such a noble soul shouldn't have such a narrow mind, referring to Jae's sword. Meanwhile, Jae attempted to use his questioning skill on the elderly man but couldn't succeed. He began to wonder if this old man caused Mino's soul corruption. Thinking that defeating the old man might save Mino, Jae charged towards him. They clashed swords, surprising each other with their strong defenses. Both of them were astonished by their ability to block powerful attacks. Suddenly, the old man's sword started to crack, revealing him to everyone in the camp. The old man turned to Jae in anger, asking how he could destroy his world and demanding to know who he was. Gripping his cracked sword tightly, it shattered into countless pieces, leaving the old man sad and angry, as it was made from a trihorn's horn. Jae remained silent, convinced that it wasn't him but the old man who broke the sword. The elderly person turned out to be Chango, the divine physician of the castle. Jahir approached him and asked why he was there, to which Chango replied that someone was about to die, regardless of his position as the fortress master. This surprised Jahir and his subordinate. Chango then turned to Jae, stating that he had completely disrupted his dead slash, a move only possible with a sword made from a trihorn or something better. He noticed Jae's pentahorn sword and was amazed. He asked where Jae got such an incredible sword. Jae asked if Chango could save Mino if he lent him the sword. Chango agreed, and Jae handed it over. Chango thought Jae must be very confident in his abilities to trust a stranger with his sword. Chango held the sword and remarked that it was like its owner. Everyone in the camp watched with curiosity. Chango suggested they see what the sword could do. A bright light spread throughout the camp, making Jae-hwan wonder if it was another illusion. But he soon realized it was similar to how he perceived things using his questioning skill. He wondered if the old man had a similar ability. The sword slipped from the old man's grasp, and he collapsed, leaving Jae-hwan perplexed. Chango explained that he lacked spiritual energy due to the castellan. Suddenly, the ground trembled, signaling the world's collapse around them. Realizing the treatment had failed, Chango apologized to Jae-hwan and expressed his embarrassment. Jae-hwan stepped forward and took back his sword. Chango commented that it was foolish to try mimicking the dead slash without fully integrating into his world. Jae-hwan admitted he couldn't perform the slash but was willing to try. He tightly held the sword, and Chango warned him that dead slashing wasn't something just anyone could do. Jae-hwan remembered Claire's words. She had said his actions weren't acts of bravery but recklessness. So, he told Chango to hush and placed his sword on the ground. It was the first time in his life he had used his sword to save someone. Hearing this, Chango was surprised, and Jae-hwan began to recall Mino's appearance, sketching it on the floor. Jae-hwan remembered every detail of Mino's face, personality, and expression. He made a complete sketch of her on the floor but felt like something was missing. After a moment of thought, he added a mole under her eye, completing her face. As soon as he finished the sketch, they were transported back to the real world, where Jae-hwan noticed that Mino's condition had greatly improved. Seeing Mino's corruption level dropping and the deadification process stopping, Jahir was amazed. Chango noticed that Jae-hwan seemed less narrow-minded and asked who he was. Remembering the technique he used, Chango asked where he had learned it. Jahir turned to Chango and asked if Jae-hwan had really used something like a dead slash. Chango confirmed it and explained that the dead slash wasn't a skill, which is why adapters couldn't learn it. They all realized that Jae-hwan was not an adapter but an awakener, just like Chango. Awakeners were rare individuals who gained immense power by rejecting adaptation, capable of altering the balance of power in the chaotic world. Jahir believed that because Jae-hwan was an awakener like Chango, he could use the dead slash. However, Chango insisted they still didn't know Jae-hwan's true identity. Jahir reminded Chango that he had said if there was another person who could use the dead slash, they might be able to save the castellan. Chango stayed silent, and Jahir emphasized that saving the castellan was their top priority. Suddenly, someone arrived at the camp, claiming permission from the inner castle and instructing them to step aside. Jahir recognized him as the Dark Shadow Captain. They wondered why these people, seemingly unrelated to the dead extermination, were there. Instead of addressing the group, the captain approached Jae-hwan and knelt before him, referring to him as the envoy of the Green Purus. When he got up, he asked Jae-hwan to come with him to the inner castle, leaving Jahir and Chango shocked. As they gazed at Jae-hwan, they questioned whether he truly was the envoy of the Green Purus. After some time, they reached the inner castle, and the Dark Shadow Captain, along with Jahir, took Jae-hwan to meet Uran. Uran introduced himself as the commander of the castle, remarking that they had finally met. He then got straight to the point. After that, he came to the main topic and asked if Jae-hwan was really the envoy of the Green Purus. Jae-hwan replied that he wasn't, which left the Dark Shadow Captain shocked. Uran, on the other hand, said he expected this answer. Chango argued that the Spectre Crystal proved the identity of Green Purus clan members and asked Jae-hwan where he got them if he wasn't part of their clan. Jae-hwan took one of the crystals and said he picked them up, which made them wonder what happened to the crystal's original owners. Jae-hwan revealed they were all dead, making them question who would dare harm members of one of the 5 noble clans of the Great Land. Without fear, Jae-hwan boldly admitted that he had killed them all, leaving them shocked. Uran, however, asked him why he did it, and Jae-hwan explained that they had attacked him first and tried to take his horns, so he had to defend himself. Uran remarked that the Green Purus clan was known for being greedy for materials and seemed to understand why Jae-hwan had done what he did. After a moment, he turned to Jae-hwan and asked for more details about what happened after he came to Chaos. Jae-hwan explained that he had ended up in Chaos by chance after getting spirit stones from the Emerald Bug clan and entering the fortress. He got caught up in an incident, met the Divine Physician, and learned about the dead slash only after encountering it. Uran assured Jae-hwan that he believed him. Chango questioned whether Uran really thought Jae-hwan's story was true, and Uran confirmed his trust, leading Chango to comment that Uran had gone insane. Uran explained that to gain someone else's trust, you first need to trust that person. Then, he asked Jae-hwan if the body he possessed was a living one. This surprised Jae-hwan, as he recalled refusing to join the main game and leaving the tower by destroying it. Jahir realized that the illusion tree had mistaken him for a dead person and sent him to chaos, while his physical body might still be on Earth. He asked Uran how he knew about this. Uran repeated Jahir's claim of getting caught up in something and entering chaos by chance, pointing out that no one would describe their own death as Jahir did. He then asked if Jahir didn't want to reveal his identity because of a potential threat, but Jahir disagreed. Uran then admitted that he owed Jahir an apology. He explained that for the past 4 days, his team had been secretly keeping tabs on Jahir, and Jahir acknowledged that he was aware of it. Uran commented that Jahir was stronger than they had anticipated, which made monitoring him quite challenging. Afterward, Uran opened some computer windows in front of him, mentioning that they had gathered valuable information during their surveillance. He said that he would now share Jahir's threat level, his power level, and the extent of the damage he had caused in recent days. While Uran was explaining, Chango interrupted, calling Jahir a crazy person. Jahir remained silent, and Uran acknowledged that some might see him as a hero and others as crazy. He explained that individuals like Jahir were often referred to as protagonists. Uran mentioned that protagonists had a distinctive trait: they were famous. However, Uran believed that Jahir was not famous at all, mainly because someone had been concealing his information and there seemed to be a hostile force working against him. Uran thought this was why Jahir had faced difficulties during the identification process, triggering memories of that particular day for Jahir. Uran said that Jahir was the protagonist being chased by a powerful force that had followed him into chaos. This surprised Jahir, who thought it might be the person known as the Monarch of Pitch Darkness. He wondered how strong these monarchs were. Uran assured Jahir that they wouldn't ask about his identity or make him compensate for damages. Instead, they offered him protection. Jahir asked if Gorgon Fortress could stand against the 12 monarchs of the Almighty Land. Uran confirmed that the 12 monarchs were indeed the ones chasing him, and it might be one of them. Uran thought it was great, as the monarchs wouldn't be able to meddle in chaos matters. Jahir asked what they wanted from him in return. Uran explained they only needed him to save the fortress master. 2 hours later, as they descended the stairs to a basement, the person leading Jahir and Chango mentioned that Carlton and Mino were recovering in the treatment center. They asked if they should take them to the training ground instead of the VIP room. Chango suggested they determine who was better between his slashing and Jahir's thrusting. He mentioned that Jahir had cleared the Tower of Masters, surprising Jahir. Jahir asked Chango if he knew anything about it, and Chango nodded as they stopped in front of a room. Chango proposed that if Jahir defeated him, he would answer all his questions. However, he believed Jahir couldn't win. After some time passed, Jahir was unharmed while Chango crashed into the floor. Chango suggested they restart the match, claiming he hadn't used his ultimate technique yet. Jahir grew bored of hearing the same thing repeatedly. Chango asked Jahir's age, revealing he was 60, while Chango claimed to be 1,000 years old. Jahir remarked that Chango's slashing appeared to have only 10 years of practice. This angered Chango, who jumped up from the hole, imbued his sword with powerful energy, and charged at Jahir. Jahir took out his sword, and an intense battle between the two began. As their swords clashed, a strong burst of energy surrounded them during their intense fight. Chango struck Jahir with great force, sending him backward. Even though Jahir had used a basic move, he felt surprised by the impact. Meanwhile, Chango asked about the name of Jahir's technique, finding it very effective. Jahir revealed it was called the normal stab, which made Chango think it sounded too plain for such a powerful move. Chango suggested that the name made it seem like there was an even stronger technique. In response, Jahir gripped his sword tightly and hinted at an even more formidable technique. Hearing this, Chango was shocked and asked what it was. Jahir charged at him with an aura reminiscent of the ultimate Chaos King, causing Chango to remember the fear of facing such power and feel anxious, wondering if he could even defend himself. He feared that Jahir's attack might destroy the entire Gorgon castle. Jahir announced his intent to attack, but Chango, fearing the destruction, admitted defeat. Meanwhile, in the 5th region, the Steel region, a person ordered their subordinate to provide details about the Pitch Black Monarch's actions. The subordinate revealed that the Pitch Black Monarch was in contact with chaos. This person, Hioyu, the Steel Monarch, questioned why the monarch was involved with chaos when they were supposed to avoid such interference. The subordinate explained that the situation was complex and showed Hyoyu a video of Jae-hwan. Hyoyu recognized the video that had been circulating and asked how it related to their discussion, noting that it was rumored to be fake. The subordinate revealed that Jae-hwan was the product the pitch-black monarch intended to contract. Hearing this, Hyoyu inquired about Jae-hwan's whereabouts. The subordinate explained that after refusing to complete the tutorial, Jae-hwan had broken through the tower's roof and disappeared into chaos. Hyoyu found it unbelievable and assumed that someone on the 100th floor must have been watching him. However, the subordinate revealed that Jae-hwan had killed those watching him, leaving Hyoyu shocked. After some thought, Hyoyu asked if the 9th region of the Almighty Land truly had connections with chaos, and the subordinate confirmed it, saying it had been recently uncovered. She explained that the pitch-black monarch had been interfering with chaos for a long time, and some sects in the 9th region had been in regular contact with the pitch-black monarch. Curious about what the pitch-black monarch was up to, Hyoyu instructed his subordinate to send a notice so he could travel to chaos. She asked if he planned to interfere with chaos, to which Hyoyu replied that he just wanted to observe and understand the situation. He then told her to send 10 elite gold 1 rank warriors and Ha-young, and she did as he asked. After she left, Hyoyu wondered how Chango was doing, thinking that he might have lived longer if he hadn't been so hot-headed. Meanwhile, in the Gorgon castle, Chango pleaded with Jae-hwan to stop and clung to his sword, saying he couldn't let him proceed. Jae-hwan told him to get down, assuring him that he understood. Chango got off the sword and questioned how Jae-hwan could possess such incredible power after only a few stabs over 40 years. Jae-hwan revealed that he had practiced stabbing about 10 billion times, leaving Chango astonished. He asked if Jae-hwan had stabbed 8 times a second without a break, and Jae-hwan explained that he could stab up to 100 times a second. Sitting down near Chango, Jae-hwan asked why he thought stabbing was limited to using a sword and extended his hand, releasing shiny particles. Chango recognized the sharp and foreign energy emanating from Jae-hwan and realized it was his hostility and intent to reshape the world. The shiny particles transformed into small spikes that pierced Chango's fingers, and Jae-hwan explained that this was his version of stabbing. Chango couldn't believe it and realized that Jae-hwan had become a stabbing expert, repeatedly reshaping the world. Jae-hwan then showed Chango a contract they had written before their duel, stating that the loser must grant the winner's wish. He began reading the contract aloud to remind Chango of his promise, which frustrated him. Worried that he might be used as a slave, Chango asked what Jae-hwan wanted. Jae-hwan clarified that he only wanted honest answers to his questions, and Chango agreed. Before starting the questions, Jae-hwan suggested they take a walk around the castle. During their walk, Jae-hwan asked about the Master's Tower. Chango explained that these towers, ranging from F to S rank, were created by master craftsmen, and only a few managed to reach S rank as apprentices. The special towers related to cultivation were known as Master Towers. Jae-hwan inquired why such towers were created, and Chango admitted he didn't know the exact reason but mentioned that awakeners who cleared these towers kept appearing. Jae-hwan asked if Chango was from one of the Master's Towers, and Chango confirmed that he came from Master Melville's 4th tower. He said it was a tower known as Moby Dick Worldwide, or a giant white whale used to appear on the 1st floor, constantly chasing people. He recalled it being a disaster back then when many martial masters died. He considered it a miracle to have cleared such a dangerous tower. Chango asked which tower Jae-hwan had cleared, and he revealed it was Mulaka's tower. Chango was surprised, remarking that it was a tough task to clear Mulaka's tower. Jae-hwan asked if Chango knew Mulak, and Chango confirmed, revealing they used to travel together, leaving Jae-hwan surprised. Jae-hwan inquired if it was true. Chango said it was a long story and suggested they go for a walk outside. They left the castle, strolled through the streets, and had dinner. Seeing Claire selling food on the street because her pub was destroyed, Chango mentioned that her stall would serve as an open-air street stall for the time being. Looking at the summoning chamber ahead, Chango explained that it was a place where exhausted souls from the Almighty Land's war found peace. He revealed that after being released, everyone could finally live normal lives and cherish peace, putting aside their weapons. While they discussed this, they suddenly noticed 2 people fighting behind them. Jae-hwan thought they were just drunkards and took a sip of his drink, finding it tasteless. Chango revealed they weren't actually drunk but were pretending to be, as in the chaos, people didn't age, get hungry, or get drunk. However, this made them crave the opposite. They started acting as if they were living a real life, needing to eat to survive. One day, a group of people who wanted something new emerged, gathering others to rediscover real life. They embarked on an expedition called the Abyss Expedition. Jae-hwan was surprised and asked why they were heading to the abyss of all places. Chango explained they were searching for the fruit of resurrection there. According to him, those were the fruits hanging on the branches of the illusion tree at the end of the abyss. Jae-hwan asked if a dead person could really be brought back to life upon hearing this. Chango agreed, saying that the only way to revive the dead was by eating the fruit of the resurrection. He revealed that the Abyss Expedition was formed to find that fruit. Chango explained that during the expedition, Mulak, who was the captain, approached him. Mulak had achieved an incomplete awakening without giving up his emotions, which was unusual. Mulak commented on how tough it must be for Chango, who threw his sword in frustration. However, Mulak dodged it and asked why Chango was going to the abyss when they usually stayed in rooms and built towers. Mulak mentioned that he had nothing to say about it and that apologizing on behalf of all the people who built towers would be pointless. This revelation shocked Chango. Mulak stated that the reason he was going to the illusion tree and the abyss was the tower that ended all cultivation. He returned the sword to Chango and said that was why he joined the expedition. Jae-hwan asked if the expedition was successful, and Chango explained that he only made it to the entrance and believed that Mulak reached the top of the illusion tree because the fruits of resurrection began to fall. Jae-hwan wondered why Chango was still in chaos, and then Claire approached, correcting Chango's account. She revealed that the expedition failed after obtaining the fruits. Chango shared that on their way back to chaos, the monarchs and patriarchs of the Almighty Land attacked them. They chose to fight, but they were no match for the powerful monarchs and faction leaders. The fruit of resurrection was stolen from them, and the monarchs continued to use the fruits to revive themselves for the past 900 years. Chango also told Jae-hwan about the Resurrection Palace, where the monarchs took turns reviving following a predetermined order. Jae-hwan realized that the people of chaos were lethargic because they knew they could never obtain the fruit of resurrection. He wanted to ask Chango something about Mulak but found him asleep. Claire revealed that Chango was truly drunk after pretending to be drunk for 1,000 years. She mentioned that Mulak was never seen again after the expedition. James then approached Jae-hwan, thanking him for helping their captain survive and telling him to enter Gorgon through the North Gate in the future without revealing his identity. As James left, Jahir appeared while gasping for air, warning them of trouble ahead.